So, what happens when a brand new nation says no thanks to both capitalism and communism? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're exploring the third way proposed by Pandit Deendayal Upadhyaya. His philosophy, known as Integral Humanism, is a really important topic for the UGC NET exam, and we're about to break down everything you need to know.
I want you to picture it. It's the 1950s, India is finally independent, and it's standing at a huge crossroads. On one side, you've got the American model of capitalism, all about the individual, all about profit. And on the other side, you have Soviet communism, where the state controls everything for the collective. So the big question for India's leaders was, do we just pick one of these, or is there another way? Can we actually forge our own path?
And this is exactly where Pandit Deendayal Upadhyaya steps into the picture. He was a major thinker for the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, and for him, the most important battle for India wasn't political, it was intellectual. He was absolutely convinced that the nation needed a path that was uniquely, authentically Indian.
See, for Upadhyaya, just grabbing an ideology off the shelf from the West or the USSR, well, that was just another kind of colonialism. It was like a form of mental slavery. So his whole mission was to create a new philosophy, one that grew right out of India's own soil, its own culture, its own unique spirit.
So, what did he come up with? Well, the result of this whole mission was his core philosophy, Integral Humanism. Okay, so what on earth does that actually mean?
At the absolute center of his philosophy is Integral Humanism, or Ekatma Manav-vad. He really pushed back against how Western thought seemed to, chop people up into little pieces. It reduced them to just an economic animal under capitalism, or maybe a faceless cog in the machine under communism. He said, no, a human being is an integrated whole thing. You can't separate the parts.
And this integral whole, he said, is made up of 4 connected parts. He insisted that any system, any government, has to nourish all of them. The body, or sharira, the mind, mana, the intellect, buddhi, and the soul, atma. If you ignore even one of these, he argued, the entire society gets thrown off balance and could even collapse. Okay, pay attention here, because this little table is an absolute goldmine for your exam prep. Just look at the differences. While capitalism and communism run on competition and conflict, integral humanism is all about harmony. And their goals? Totally different. Instead of just focusing on material things like profit or equality, integral humanism aims for something called pushartha, which is the balanced pursuit of life's 4 big goals: righteous conduct, material well-being, desire, and finally, spiritual liberation. It's a much more holistic view of a good life. Now, what's really fascinating is how Upadhyaya takes this idea of an integrated person and applies it to the whole nation. He basically argued that just like a person has a soul, a nation has one too. And this brings us to a super important exam term, Chiti. The best way to think of Chiti is as the nation's soul. It's that unique, innate character and identity. For Upadhyaya, this is the ultimate guide. Any policy, any action a nation takes has to be in tune with its Chiti. If it's not, the nation is heading for trouble. So if Chiti is the soul, then Virat is kind of like the body's life force. Virat is the collective power, that social energy of all the people that's needed to protect and power the Chiti. A strong nation, in his view, is one where the Virat is awake, it's active, and it's totally aligned with its national soul. Now, this is a really crucial point, and it's something that often trips people up. Upadhyaya talked about a Dharma Rajya, but he was very, very clear that this is not a theocratic state. For him, Dharma isn't about one specific religion, it's about a universal moral law, a code of righteousness and duty that applies to everyone from the ruler at the top to the citizen on the street. So, if a nation is guided by this kind of moral compass, what does its economy actually look like? I mean, how do you build a system that serves the whole person and not just the financial bottom line? This one quote pretty much captures his entire economic philosophy. He was really skeptical of huge, centralized industries that push people out of their jobs. Instead, he was all for a decentralized model that empowers people and makes sure there's work for every single hand. So, what's the test for success in this economy? Well, you don't look at the billionaires at the top, no. Instead, you turn around and look at the person at the very, very back of the line. Their well-being, their progress, that is the only true measure of a nation's economic success. And this principle has a name, another must-know term, Antyodaya. It literally means the rise of the last person.
He made this the absolute cornerstone of his economic policy. Any plan, any budget, any government program that doesn't reach and lift up the most marginalized person is, in his eyes, a complete failure.
His entire economic vision really stands on four main pillars. First, Swadeshi, which means national self-reliance. Second, decentralization, so empowering villages and small industries. Third is trusteeship, this idea that your personal wealth is actually a responsibility you hold for society. And finally, a human-centric model, where the real goal is human growth, not just a bigger GDP.
All right, let's bring this all together and see how these ideas actually get tested on the UGC NET exam. This is where all this knowledge really pays off.
Here's a perfect example of a question you might see. It looks simple, but it's checking if you're paying attention. Who came up with the theory of integral humanism? Go ahead, lock in your answer.
And the answer is, of course, B, Deendayal Upadhyaya. But here's a pro tip for you. The people who set the exam love to create a little trap here by confusing integral humanism with M.N. Roy's radical humanism. So just remember, Upadhyaya is integral, Roy is radical. Don't let them trick you.
As you're doing your final revision, just use this checklist. Seriously, if you can confidently explain each of these 5 core concepts in a single sentence, you're going to be in great shape for any question on Deendayal Upadhyaya that comes your way.
So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Upadhyaya's whole philosophy is built on this idea of a nation's inner compass. It's Chiti. The big question for us today is, in this complex, globalized world we live in, how does a nation even find its soul? And maybe more importantly, how does it stay true to it? Thanks so much for tuning in.